I'm Jonah Comstock, Editor-in-Chief of pharmaphorum. I'm here in the Barnes Hotel in Union Square in San Francisco. It's day 2 of JP Morgan, and I'm sitting with Paul Hastings, the CEO of Nkarta. Thanks for talking with me today, Paul.
Thank you, Jonah.
So for folks who don't know Nkarta, tell me just the quick elevator pitch of what you guys do.
Yes. We are a cell therapy company developing natural killer cells in the field of autoimmune diseases like lupus and scleroderma, myositis, myasthenia gravis. We're in the clinic with in 2 different clinical trials. One is a lupus nephritis trial, and the other is a basket study that includes many of those other indications I just mentioned.
Cool. So this is very new stuff. I know it was just a couple years ago this study came out of a German researcher that said, oh, the cell therapy that we've been using for cancer might work in lupus, might work in autoimmune.
Yes.
And so you guys are working on that, but you're doing it with NK cells.
That's right.
Why NK cells instead of T cells?
So NK cells are kind of handmade for autoimmune disease. They tend to go in and work very quickly. What you need in autoimmune disease is a rapid B cell depletion and a rapid reset so the good B cells come back. You probably don't need the months and months of expansion that happen with a CAR T where the T cells keep expanding. What probably is working for the patients with T cells is the rapid reduction of the B cells and the quick repletion of good B cells. You could probably do that with an NK cell. Why would that be better? Well, because the NK cells on a cell-by-cell basis are more potent than T cells, so you might get better depletion. We don't need the lymphodepletion that goes with CAR T cells. We're using modified lymphodepletion instead of using fludarabine and cyclophosphamide. We're just using cyclophosphamide, which is an agent that lupus patients and other autoimmune patients get anyway. So we're adding our cells to what is already standard of care versus adding another chemotherapeutic agent. And since these are chronic diseases, not cancer, people are not dying from these diseases. Sometimes they do, but it's more of a chronic illness. You probably want to be more careful with the kind of preconditioning you give and not set them up for toxicities from that preconditioning. You also don't need to apherese the patient, take their blood and make cells. Our cells are off the shelf. We can take your NK cells from a healthy donor and make our NKX019 product so that when the patient shows up to the clinic, we have the cells already. We're not spending weeks manufacturing them.
It's allogeneic.
It's allogeneic off the shelf, that's right.
So you mentioned you've got several assets in the pipeline. How far along are you, and what does this coming year look like for you?
Yeah, so this year we're going to have data in both of these studies. Now it's phase 1/2 data that we'll have. It'll be in both the lupus nephritis trial, but also in the basket study where it's myositis, vasculitis, and scleroderma. We also have 2 investigator-sponsored trials. One of them is in systemic lupus, and the other one is in myasthenia gravis. And so there may be information coming from those trials as well. Those trials are managed and run by the investigators. So we have all these multiple shots on goal where we may have some data for. So we're very much looking forward to seeing how these cells work in all these different patient types, which ones we will prioritize once we discover which ones respond the best and which ones we move forward into the next phase of development.
Yeah, but you're pretty confident that you're onto something here with the overall.
What is necessary for these patients is B cell depletion. If we're confident that NK cells should work, as well as T cells with a better safety profile, with more convenience and with more safety, and we're pretty excited about that.
How are you finding the kind of funding environment for a company like yours? Are you getting a lot of interest and a lot of excitement? Is it getting harder, getting easier?
Yeah, at this time last year, we had some pretty fascinating B cell depletion data, which made people pay a lot of attention to us as we started to go into this disease state. We were able to raise money right after that. So we raised over $200 million. So we now ended the last quarter with over $405 million. So that money takes us into late 2027. So we don't need to raise money right now.
Great.
So we're in a good place. But
when you do, you'll have more data, hopefully.
When we do, we'll have more data, exactly, and we'll have more value. Yeah.
How have you found the conference so far? What are some things you've heard or some trends you're picking up on, thinking about the year to come?
Yeah, this is a conference which kicks off the year. And generally, if people are doing deals at the end of the prior year, you'd like to see them be announced at this conference. And we had a couple of them that were announced, and one of them was Intracellular Therapeutics. And that's a company that's been around a long time, and a woman who runs that company that's done a wonderful job building that company. That deal and other deals that have been announced this week signal to the market that innovation will lead to value for investors because there'll be exits for those investors. And so that's a good thing. And it's a good thing when you see that happen to good people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And last year we didn't really have any big exits. That's that's someone said that no deals over $5 billion last year, and
Yep.
and we're already seeing that big.
That one deal was $14.6 billion. Yeah.
So hopefully an augur of things to come. But last year we did have a couple of big deals announced at J.P. Morgan, and then and that didn't really seem to presage a lot of deals throughout the year. So you kind of never know.
You never know. Yeah. So companies get bought. You don't sell them. If you have something that's interesting to another company or a bigger company that they're looking for, they will look for you. And so if the innovation that we've all done leads to bigger companies taking a look at us saying, we'd like to have that technology, more deals will happen, whether they be licensing or acquisitions.
Well, let's talk about that in the context of cell therapy in particular, because it's certainly a field where a ton of innovation is happening.
Yep.
And it's being driven by small companies, biotechs, and startups.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
Clearly the big pharmas are interested. How interested? What are they interested in? I mean, do you think there's going to be a moment where there's an acquisition spree for cell therapy assets, or is it going to be more gradual?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I could predict what kind of environment's going to be here, but what I will say is a large company like Gilead, who bought an innovative company like Kite, has taken what Kite did and improved upon that, and they're probably what I would consider the premier large pharma that's able to deliver cell therapy, an autologous cell therapy, and continue to make that better and partner with others to make, partnership with Arcellx, where they're working on another autologous cell therapy. So other big companies see that and go, oh, there's value there, right?
Yeah.
So BMS is in this field, and Novartis is in this field, and Genentech is in this field. So there are plenty of big companies that are in it. Will they choose a cell therapy over another technology, a bispecific antibody, a T-cell engager? See what happens with the data.
Right, exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And it does seem like a pharma company would be interested in allogeneic if the data was good. Because
because
it looks better into their model.
It looks more like a drug than a cell therapy, right? So that's the nice thing about an NK cell. It's kind of like giving an antibody. It's off the shelf. It's allogeneic, as you said, off the shelf. So we manufacture it. We have a manufacturing facility that makes it here. So when that product arrives in the institution where they're going to treat the patient, or the clinic, or the infusion center, it's a vial ready to give. You have to thaw it. It's a cryopreserved vial, but you have to do that with some drugs anyway. So it looks more like what they're used to.
And you did mention, that you do need a donor cells to begin with. What's your kind of supply chain for that? How does that work?
Yeah, there are companies and there are services that get healthy donor donations, and we work with those companies and screen those donors and make those different cell therapies based on those donors, and create a bank of cell therapies.
That infrastructure has kind of sprung up as cell therapy has become more.
That infrastructure's been out there for a while for other things, but yes, there are folks that do it very well, do it quite well.
Any other big picture thoughts about the industry right now? Could be on the funding side, could be on the research R&D side, or anything really.
I think the pace of research today and the pace of innovation is a little bit like the pace of what's going on in AI. It's exponential, and there's a lot of cool stuff happening and a lot of cool science. So the question is going to be, is there enough money to fund all this stuff? And is there enough money to make, look, in science, you have to fail to succeed. You do an experiment and it doesn't always work. That's not a bad thing in science, but you have to have the capital to get through the failures to have the successes.
Right.
So I'm hoping that we're in that environment.
Yeah, and we'll see. There's a few more unknowns, right?
Just a few.
Interest rates and things like that.
Yeah, just a few. Yep.
Well, I hope you enjoy the rest of the show, and I'll be looking forward to seeing that data when it comes out.
Thank you, John. We appreciate it.